inclusive safe spaces for trans and gender non-conforming people in our community. And we're joined by two lovely folks. So we have Justin Gronart, and he's the Vice President of Public Policy with the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce. And Justin is going to be sharing some information about the transgender bathroom bill that the state of Tennessee recently passed. So Justin, I'm going to kick it off to you, and then I will stop sharing my screen as well.
Well, thank you. Obviously, it's great to be with you all today. Can everybody hear me all right? Am I good? Okay. So yeah, this legislative session was one that was pretty interesting. We got a lot of really great stuff done, and then we, got some other stuff done that business community wasn't quite as fond of. House Bill 1182 is one that we've heard a lot about. It was the bathroom sign bill. Essentially what it does is it says that if you are a public-facing business that has a public restroom and has a policy, written or informal, that allows those that are not of a biological sex to use a gender-specific bathroom, you have to place a sign that essentially says that's what you're doing. And there's parameters for the signage and all this stuff in the bill. It does exclude unisex, single occupancy, and family restrooms. So if you have any of those three, it doesn't affect you. Essentially, there is no enforcement mechanism in the bill, meaning there are penalties theoretically, but the business community basically worked to basically make this what we like to deem a headline bill and not really a workhorse bill. So essentially, yes, you could get cited by some entity that we're not sure even exists. And if you were cited for being in violation, you still have 30 days in order to comply with said law. I say all that to say a federal court's already put an injunction on the bill. So even though it was signed into law, it is not in effect right now. It will likely have to work its way through the federal court system. And I would be hard pressed to see how it ever sees the light of day again, honestly, or how hard the state wants to fight for this bill. The original language was a lot stricter and a lot more draconian for businesses, which sort of raised the ire of the business community, and as a coalition worked together to kind of strip the bill of its more egregious parts. So I will tell you that yes, it is it's a bad bill, shouldn't have been passed. But at the end of the day, it's more of a PR win than an actual attempt to influence businesses and how they handle their restrooms, if that makes any sense. Again, it's going to have to go through the federal court system at this point. So I'm not even convinced that it's going to be an issue. But again, it's just kind of one of those bills that you kind of have to stop and shake your head at, because there's other things we really ought to be focused on from a business community. So that's the quick rundown on the bill. And again, we'll see what happens. I think the federal court injunction kind of gives everybody a lot more time to breathe and figure out if this is actually going to go anywhere. But it's a pretty simple bill. It's 2 pages long, and it's mostly definitions of what they're referring to. I will tell you that the original idea was not an attempt to influence small businesses per se. It was really an attempt to rein in the big box stores that have bathrooms that are used by dozens or hundreds of people in a day, and not so much targeted to smaller businesses. But obviously, as you write these things, there's certainly organizations or businesses that get sort of pulled in to something like this. But again, we don't think there is any real good enforcement mechanism for this, even if they wanted to try. There's no good way for them to do it. I don't think there's going to be, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation people running around trying to enforce this anyway. I know the Nashville DA came out right as it was being signed and said, we're not going to prosecute this anyway. So there's a lot of, again, push and pull on something like this. So just, it's a good thing to be aware of. It's a good thing to keep in mind. It's a good thing to be prepared for. But right now, there's nothing that anybody needs to do because of the federal injunction. And even then, I think, again, it would be a hard thing to kind of follow up and have to enforce. So that's your quick rundown.
Thank you, Justin. I know that we, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I've been having some sound issues, and I obviously have camera issues right now, but just wanted to say thank you for jumping on and giving us that rundown.
Sure.
I know that as we are all part of the arts and culture community, I know we had several of our community arts partners who were concerned about that in terms of how to run business as usual with this very unusual bill that, like you said, has no means of being enforced. So just for everybody's peace of mind, it's safe to say that we really don't need to worry about this as the arts and culture community, because our organizations are not the ones, like you said, being targeted. It's our Targets, it's our Walmarts, it's like you said, the big box store. So it looks like we've got a question from Henry with the Creative Discovery Museum. He asked, could the bill still result in conventions or other organizations not coming to the state?
I would say that is the worry. I mean, that is the concern when you start targeting folks the way that some states have. When North Carolina passed their bathroom bill several years ago, the NBA pulled the All-Star game. And that was like 2 months before the All-Star game. So, I mean, you saw it, in Georgia with the voting rights bill and the All-Star game moving to Colorado. That is the concern, certainly. Because this bill, again, it doesn't really do anything other than give certain legislators a headline win. Will it have a massive impact? I don't think so. But again, it's a string of bills that I think the legislature is playing with fire with, that could ultimately impact the economic development, the tourism industries. Those are certainly things that we are concerned about, and that's why we try to squash these bills. And if we can't squash them, we try to make them as ineffectual as possible to try to prevent something like that. But that is a real concern, certainly. And the more headlines you make on stuff like this, in a world that things go viral pretty quickly, it doesn't take much. So I know that the business community has a growing concern about this type of stuff that the legislature is continually pursuing, and we are working together to try to find ways to blunt a lot of that and try to prevent that fallout from coming.
Thank you. And I know you've probably got other things to take care of. So if you don't mind, how can if folks have questions about this stuff, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. I will put my contact info in the chat. I will give you my cell phone and my email, and feel free to text me or call me or shoot me an email. And I'm happy to either answer your question or find the answer to your question. And odds are I'll probably be finding the answer to your question, but I'm happy to do it. So any way we can be helpful at the Chamber, obviously, please let us know. We consider ourselves to be a great partner with Arts Build. You guys do a lot of amazing work for our community, and we certainly are proud to call you friends, and look forward to continuing to work with you any way we can. And as stuff like this happens, please reach out. Let me know how I can be a resource to you all as well. And I just appreciate the opportunity, Amy.
Yeah. And Justin, thank you so much for being such a great ally for us, both you personally and the Chamber of Commerce. I know everyone here appreciates that. So thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Mary, I'm sorry, I kind of usurped the microphone, so I'll let you have it back. But thanks again, Justin.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Justin. All right, we are going to move on to our next speaker and kind of keynote speaker, we are joined today by the lovely Tracy McDaniel. And Tracy is going to be sharing with us ways to create more inclusive and safe spaces for trans and gender non-conforming people. Tracy is a trans human rights advocate and published author. And she's motivated by a strong desire to ensure that all trans and gender non-conforming people receive equity, justice, civil and human rights protections. So Tracy, I'm gonna kick it off to you and let you share your screen and start your presentation. And Tracy wants this to be as interactive as possible, so feel free to jump in and ask questions either in the chat box or raise your hand and we can unmute you.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Can everyone see my screen? Okay.
I cannot see your screen. Wait, is there? I don't see your screen, Tracy.
I don't either. I see your camera.
Okay, let's see what we can do here. I thought just a second. Okay, how about now?
No.
Okay, guess I have to try to share it again. Okay, here we go.
Yep. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Miriam, for that introduction. And I want to also thank Amy. I want to thank y'all so much for inviting me to participate in this important conversation. We're just going to have a conversation about ways to create safe spaces for gender non-conforming, trans, and non-binary people. And this is an opportunity for everyone to ask any burning questions that you've ever wanted to ask someone who's trans-identified. This is now the opportunity to ask it. You can ask these questions here in the safe space, and you won't get any side eyes for asking your questions. So there is no such thing as a stupid question. So we want you to answer. This is a place to get your questions answered. Like I said, I wanted to say thank you to Arts Build. When Miriam contacted me about doing the presentation, and I saw your website where you said your mission is to build a stronger community through arts, I had to say yes. Because I am a former entertainment, a performance artist who worked in the entertainment and arts industry for over 30 years. I'm now retired from the stage. However, I'm really appreciative of the work that you're doing to build our community and bring our community together through arts and creativity. My personal contact information for those who want to contact me afterwards for follow-up questions or anything is my email is juxtaposecenter@bellsouth.net. My phone number is 678-591-3481. Can everybody hear me okay? Perfect.
Yes.
Just a brief background. Miriam mentioned that I'm a published author. I published my first book in 2013. I'm working on my new book now. It's a fictitious story about Egypt and a eunuch, which is a modern day transgender person, an affair with a pharaoh. Again, I'm the executive director and founder of Juxtapose Center for Transformation Incorporated. I'm also one of the original co-founders of Trans Housing Atlanta program, which is an organization that provides assistance to people who are dealing with homelessness, in addition to providing money to help you pay your bills, buy food, pay rent, pay your mortgage, or put gas in your car. A group of concerned stakeholders within the community, we came together because so many people are being denied access to homeless shelters. And so we wanted to provide some kind of support instead of just sitting on the sideline and complaining. So we established Trans Housing Atlanta program to assist with that mission. So if you know someone within Atlanta metro area that's in need of housing assistance, have them contact Trans Housing Atlanta program at www.transhousingatlanta.org or call 404-458-7948. Just a little more history about myself. I lobbied the United States Congress in 2007 for increased HIV/AIDS funding and employment protections for trans and gender non-conforming people. In 2015, I briefed the Obama White House on the economics and the inequities and how those inequities affect trans women of color specifically. In 2016, I was the first trans person appointed to the Atlanta Citizen Review Board by our former mayor, Kasim Reed. I'm currently serving a second term after being reappointed by our current mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. I'm also the Citizen Review Board Vice Chair. And in 2019, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms appointed a group of stakeholders to her advisory board. And I'm also serving a second term on that board where we advise the mayor on policies that affect our community. 2020, right as the pandemic hit, I was presented with a resolution from the Georgia House of Representatives and Representative Park Cannon. So that's just a little of my background in the work and the advocacy that I do in the community. So what I want to find out from everyone here is, please raise your hands if you know someone or have a close friend or family member who's trans identified. I also call us beautiful butterflies. So let's see how many hands are raised. Perfect. That's wonderful. So for those of you who are not aware of who trans people are and you don't have any idea of how to support us and how to ally for our safety, this is the purpose of this conversation, is to talk about maybe 6 ways to advocate and make more inclusive spaces in your home, workplaces, and other environments. So we're gonna, well, but first I wanted to say, I wanted to respond to what Justin was saying earlier about the headline wins and the headline bills, is that we have legislators who don't have a clue about what they're doing and how their choices affect people. We're human beings. So their headlines, their wins, their headline wins and headline bills, they don't understand how negatively that can affect us. That those conversations and those bills may cause violence against our community, and also they contribute to our deaths. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, in the first 2 months of 2017, trans people, particularly trans women of color, were being murdered at a rate of almost 1 per week, which is ridiculous. So if our legislators understood how the legislation they pass and support affect us, then they would, I would hope they would reconsider at this point in time. So we're gonna move on to the ways to create more safe spaces for our community. Number 1, don't be weird. We're human beings just like you are, just like everyone else is. Treat us the way that you want to be treated, regardless of how you identify or your background. That's very important. Number 2, I'm sorry. Stop making assumptions about someone's gender identity based upon their appearances. You cannot tell someone's gender by just looking at them, which means rather than making assumptions, simply ask. We don't mind answering your questions. I think that we should move past the tired, trite, and often untrue stereotypes and policies and policing someone's, how they present themselves. It's not true that men or women or anyone for that matter presents in a particular way. The way to know is to politely ask. We don't mind answering your questions as long as you're not fronting on us or trying to embarrass us in front of other people. If you don't know, then just ask us. Do it discreetly. Don't just yell it out in a group of people, because that puts us on the defense. And When someone is on a defense, you don't learn anything about them. Number 3, words matter. Use gender-neutral, affirming language. Words matter, and it is very important to develop the language required to engage in thoughtful and supportive conversations about understanding experiences that are different from your own. There is power in precision in the language we choose to express ourselves, and support the creation of safe spaces where people feel safe, comfortable, and supported. Number 4, advocate for gender-neutral restrooms. We were just having that conversation. Justin just talked about the HB 1182 bill. This has been an even more recent hot topic following the previous exposure of the Department of Education's decision not to investigate or take action on complaints filed by trans students who are banned from the restrooms that match their gender identity. For anyone who has an issue with gender neutral restrooms, I would tell you your homes are already gender neutral. I don't believe that most people in their homes police people and want to know if their gender, what their gender is before they're allowed to use the restroom. So in most cases, you know, most restrooms are already gender neutral. So it should not be an issue or problem with creating those spaces and intentionally creating those spaces so that everyone feels safe. The fascination with signage in public restrooms is about policing bodies. There are individuals who don't fit into the socially constructed categories as others. And then in that way, you're othering them, you're pointing them out, you're making them seem other than the human being that other people are. Members of the trans community should be supported in being able to be seen and treated by others in a manner that is consistent with the person's gender identity, which includes assessing facilities like bathrooms without obstacles or oppression or someone policing them, period. And another way to be supportive is number 5, don't tolerate transphobic jokes or comments when you hear them. You're just as complicit as the person making the joke when you laugh at someone's offensive jokes or offensive comments. You're just as bad as them when you're not being considerate of other people. So we're not jokes. Trans people are not jokes. We're human beings just like everyone else. So don't use us as your punchline. Number 6, overarchingly cis people, which refers to someone who is not trans, must stop questioning the experience of trans people. Actually start asking, what does support look like to you? We as Black people expect much energy, expend much energy attempting to get to Wakanda, but we do not have to qualify the brilliance of our Blackness or colonizers to colonizers who just don't understand who we are, and never fully comprehend that we should be appreciated like everyone else, and just treat people the way that you want to be treated. There is so much diversity within our community, within the trans community, within our community, period. And there should not be a time where it's okay to discriminate against someone or to treat someone less than human just because of a label that society has decided that's important for us as human beings. So we went through the 6 ways of supporting trans people and creating trans spaces. I just wanted to find out if there are any questions or comments about any of those 6 ways to create safe spaces.
Tracy, we had one question in the chat. Emily Kate asked, what are the trusted online resources for families of those in transition?
Well, there's definitely PFLAG. I think there's a a P flag in almost every other state. So just look online for P flags, and that's a very important organization that supports parents and family members on um, how to move forward progressively with dealing with gender identity challenges that we're not fully aware of what to do. So P flag is a great resource. Any more questions?
Folks, feel free to raise your hand.
So just a quick question, Miriam. Are there any particularly challenges that you all have been having as far as creating spaces, safe spaces within the arts field?
I would say within the arts field, no. Thankfully, we work with a team that's kind and compassionate and understanding. And even the other organizations that are housed within our building, we have not had any issues. I guess I had a question relating to one of the points that you made about language. I think sometimes even I personally sometimes I'm not sure, like, am I using the right pronouns, or so if you can share a little bit about how to approach those kinds of situations about, like, being unsure about what pronouns or what language to use when you are potentially unsure in situations when you're dealing with trans and gender nonconforming individuals.
Yes, well, we all sometimes have a challenge with using the correct language. So don't feel like you're alone. The best thing to do is to ask the person. Ask them how do they identify, what pronouns they prefer to use, but just do it in a way that's respectful. That's not going to put the person on defensive, because when you put someone on defensive, you're not gonna get any information because they're going to be like, whatever, you offended me, I don't care what you think or say. So just discreetly ask them how they prefer to be addressed, what pronouns do they prefer. And most of the time, we don't mind asking those questions as long as it's done in love and respect.
I actually had a question. You talked about some of the things not to do, but what do you think are the best ways, or in your experience, what have been the best ways that cisgender, heterosexual folks have advocated for a more trans-inclusive community?
That's a wonderful question, and thank you so much for asking. It's very important for non-trans people to advocate for us. And that's what we want. That's what we need more. We need more people who are not trans, gender non-conforming, or non-binary to advocate for us, because they're in places, they're at tables where we're not usually, so it's very important to raise those conversations. Sometimes some people feel like it's uncomfortable, but we have to have those discussions. And sometimes, it's okay to make people uncomfortable, because the truth is the truth. And that is that trans and gender non-conforming, non-binary people are discriminated against on every level. We face discrimination in housing, we face discrimination in employment, quality health care. So there are so many things, and there's so many spaces where we're not. So it's very important for people who are not trans to speak up and to include us, to purposefully make spaces for us, which is why I really enjoy the work that I'm doing with our mayor and City Hall, is because she's purposefully creating safe spaces for us by having trans people on her advisory board. Because if we're not able to use our voices to express the things that we require to live a healthy, happy, productive life, then we need someone at the table to do so. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. And for the parents of trans people, I implore you to please support your child, because not supporting your child is actually throwing your child out to the wolves. You know, this can be a really cruel world. And, you know, you put your child in a vulnerable position by not supporting them, not loving them unconditionally, and then just taking them out. Just a little personal background. I'm really thankful for my mother that she never kicked me out of our home in regards to my gender identity. Of course, we had issues, we had challenges, we made mistakes during that process, but I have to give it to my mother no matter what. She never kicked me out of our home. I've always had a soft place to land, which is empowering to me, because once I know that I have my mother's support, my family's support, then any other comments or opinions from other people don't matter. You know, I ran away from home several times as a teenager. Well, I ran away from home the first time at 7 years old due to the challenges that I was feeling about being misplaced in my family and not being understood. However, unlike some parents, my mother always found me. Wherever I was, she found me and brought me back home. And so I always knew that I have a safe space, which is my foundation, and which is the best foundation that any child can have. Once you know that you have your family support, then you have the strength and the power to do whatever that needs to be done out in society.
Tracy, we have a couple questions. Henry, do you want to unmute yourself, or can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I just allowed him to.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you can see me too. Okay. I actually had two questions. One was just in terms of restrooms. So if you have a facility and you have, say, a men's room, women's restroom, did transgender feel comfortable going into either one, no matter, as long as they're not challenged, or do you need to do something else to make them feel more comfortable in that situation? So that's one question. My second question really goes to, because there is a lot of prejudice. So have you seen successful programs that arts organizations have done to sort of overcome that prejudice? And also, I work in children's museums, so also programs that let children have a better understanding. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Let's see if I can answer this. Trans people, we're comfortable going into any restroom that matches our gender identity. So we're not asking for any special treatment. We just want to be treated fairly like everyone else. We don't want to be policed whenever we need to go use the restrooms. So no, there isn't anything special. If you have restrooms, and as far as signage, maybe you can consider gender neutral signage, not specifically female or male. But other than that, no, we're not asking for any special treatment. We're not asking for anyone to go out of their way. Just treat us the way that everyone else is being treated. No one is policing other people about using the restroom. So why is it us that we have to worry about someone approaching us, you know, in the restroom? And, you know, somebody might get hurt that way, because if you approach me in the restroom, I'm not going to be a shrinking violet. So, but what was your next question, Henry?
So the next question was really in terms of programs. Do you know of programs that have been successful in terms of arts programs or other programs that help overcome biases? And so that was one part of the question. The other is especially programs that work with children, to have children have a better understanding of transgender, I guess, would be the other piece of that.
Oh, okay. Arts programs. I'm not sure. You know, I love what Artsfield is doing, and with the pandemic now, so many programs have closed down. So I'm not sure what's out there available now. But as far as trans people, as far as trans youth, I'm not sure what programs are out there now, arts programs that are educating youth. I think it's very important for youth to understand and be exposed to the language now, you know, because that's the world that we're living in. It's not like transgender, non-conforming, non-binary people just all of a sudden appeared on Earth. A spaceship came down and we all jumped off together. So we've been here forever, since the beginning of written history. So I think it's important for youth to understand and be, and you know, youth are more, let's say, astute, or more smarter than most adults now. It's not the youth that has issues with their friends using the same restroom as them. They see themselves as themselves. You know, they don't see gender identity or think they should be separated just because of their gender identity. So I think youth are very smart, and they need to have more credit, receive more credit than you know, than they're given. I think if we listen more to youth, then we'll understand and we'll learn a lot. But you know, sometimes we're adults, we think we know everything, we're conditioned to believe whatever, and you know, we're living in a different time now. I hope I answered your question.
You did, thank you.
And Henry, we had some folks in the chat that shared Chattanooga Girls Rock, that's in their mission to create safe spaces for trans identifying youth. So maybe you can connect with them. And then Amy also mentioned the I Am Foundation as well.
Yeah, and D'Angelo is here with us as well from the I Am Foundation. And I included the website there as well.
The I Am Foundation is an arts organization specifically for youth.
Hold on, I'll ask D'Angelo to unmute and he can tell you a little bit about his programming.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So D'Angelo, if you would just share with Tracy and the group here about a little bit about the I Am Foundation and the work you do.
Yes, ma'am. I'm D'Angelo Davis, CEO and president of I Am Foundation. We're a safe haven for LGBT youth. We mentor, shelter them, and get them educated more of life and who they are. We also protect them and fight for them at all costs.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, D'Angelo.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for doing the work and, you know, taking care of our babies.
And then I know, Tara, would you like to mention something about Chattanooga Girls Rock? I know you guys have done some phenomenal work over the past few years to make sure that you're trans inclusive.
Yes, hi. Thanks, Amy, and thanks for the recognition. D'Angelo will be reaching out, and Tracy will be reaching out as well. Yes, so we have a week-long camp that serves girls, trans, and non-binary youth. And we have been around, we had our 5th camp and we're in our 6th year. So while we are still growing and learning and making community connections, we're more than happy to share any experiences that we've had and what we've learned with our youth.
Thanks, Tara. I know a lot of great growth has come out of that program for the girls in our community.
Thank you, Tara, for the work that you're doing also. Our youth are our future, so it's important that we educate them now and prepare them. Doing also. Our youth.
All right. Miriam, do you want me to cover the questions that have been in the chat? We've got 3 of them. I think one of them has just been answered.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the questions was, are there, for you, Tracy, are there tips that social services organizations can do right now to show inclusivity?
Oh, to show inclusivity. I think it's important to train, you know, service providers, staff, frontline people, receptionists, to treat people with dignity and respect. Because if you have a company or organization where people are being disrespected and mistreated, they're not going to return back. So it's important for everyone to know that treat people the way that you want to be treated coming in the door, and you'll have a better relationship. Sometimes we have people with their own biases, their own religious beliefs, and etc. But you know, if you're in a position where someone's life depends on you providing them service or information or resources, I think that one's religion or biases should be checked at the door, because you know, you can either negatively affect someone or positively affect someone. And I hope that most people would like to have a positive effect on people, period.
Thank you. The next question was, you mentioned healthcare. So do you know anything about the status of the Tennessee law regarding hormone therapy for minors, even with a parent's consent?
I'm not familiar with that, but that's a very popular conversation. Minors, even without parents' consent, I have a challenge with that. I think that a parent should be involved. It just depends on the minor, the youth, and their age. I think should be probably individual, because some people are more mature than others. But I think that someone who's a minor should have their family involved if possible, unless there are some kind of situations where they're not. So I have a challenge with, you know, just providing services like that to people who are not of age to make those decisions themselves.
Got it. Okay, and our next question, this comes from one of our non-binary friends. As a non-binary person, what can I do to help others understand and create more safe spaces? Also, any tips on helping people with my pronouns and transition in a professional setting?
Just continue to be yourself. Continue to be your beautiful self, and people will see who you are, and they can either respect it or not. As far as discussing your pronouns, it's okay. You know, sometimes we have family members, friends who knew us way back when, before we transitioned or whatever the case may be. And it's understandable that it takes some time for them to get used to using the different pronouns and different language that we prefer. And it's okay to let them know, you know, like my family, for instance, I had a challenge with my family still using the wrong pronouns. So I just let them know individually and collectively, these are the pronouns that I prefer. And I prefer you to use those pronouns. And, you know, if they choose not to use those programs, I just won't respond. I just won't answer. Because if you're going to be blatantly disrespectful to me, then I'm not going to give you my energy, especially after we've had the conversation. So, and at some point, it just becomes an excuse. You know, it doesn't matter what you're comfortable with or how you feel or what you used to do. Here is how I want to be addressed now. Either you can respect it or not. And, you know, if you don't want to respect it, I don't need negative people or negative energy in my life. So I need to cut you off.
Thank you for that.
I hope I answered that whole question.
Sam, that one came from you. Did you have anything else to add?
For me, the biggest thing is just having, of course, I have secondary sexual features that it's very difficult. I'll tell someone that I go by they, them, and it just seems like they're really struggling to get the idea because they haven't really encountered that many non-binary people. And I'm wondering if there's a way that I can make that process easier for them.
No, you don't have to live your life making things easier for other people. Just live your life, be your beautiful self, Sam. And if you have to keep letting them know it's the correct pronoun, then, you know, then do that. But no, it's not up to us to make people comfortable. So the burden isn't on us. we don't have to be burdened down by other people's whatever ignorances, biases, whatever they feel that, you know, they don't want to respect your choices of what you say to them. No, it's not up to us to make them comfortable. They'll get over it.
And then we do.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
And Miss Flo had a comment. Flo, I'll unmute you if you wanted to share more about the information you're looking for.
I don't know. I find myself, I have friends who are non-binary, and I know how they use the term, and I find myself getting a little embarrassed because it comes across to me as a real kind of non-offensive way to have an umbrella reference, which I don't think is a correct way to do it. I found someone the other day asking for bathrooms, and I said, "Oh, they're over there and they're non-binary," and I thought to myself, what does that even mean? I didn't know if that was correct or not. And I don't know if that's just kind of a universal, you know, term, you know what I'm saying? And maybe Sam, you can address that.
Non-binary is okay. I'm sure some people understand, but gender neutral is a very popular term where most people understand. So gender neutral, or, you know, first come, first serve.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Flo. And well, Tracy, I just wanted to add to the conversation you and Flo were just having. Where'd my thought go? Whenever we're as an organization, I've read several places where whenever we're making forms or trying to collect data from the community, we need to be mindful to just put, if you're asking for pronouns, just put pronouns. It's not preferred pronouns, it's pronouns. Absolutely. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of the governmental agencies can use some overhauling with, you know, the language that they use. It's offensive to a lot of people, and it just seems like they would be more modern or more up to date, but we know how the government works. So yeah, it's very important to purposefully consider the kind of language that we use on applications, et cetera. So.
And Ms. Kate, you were looking for some information about the I Am Foundation, and D'Angelo just posted quite a bit of information for you.
Wonderful. Yep, but we just want people to understand that we're human beings just like you are, everyone else is. And we have these labels, and that doesn't mean anything when it's all said and done. We're human beings in pursuit of happiness, like everyone else is. You know, we're loved, and we want to be treated with dignity and respect, which is why I use my voice to advocate for our community. At one point, before I became more involved and active in the community, I was just living my heterosexual life, not worrying about it, or, you know, not being affected. And then I found out that trans people were being denied access to homeless shelters, and that's when I had to be more comfortable. I never denied being transgender. However, it wasn't something that was a topic of conversation every day. You know, I never have a flag or anything saying, "Hi, I'm trans, look at me." But when I started to use my voice and wanted to be more active in the community, I had to become more comfortable with being able to share that I'm trans identified. And I do understand there are trans people, gender non-conforming people, non-binary people who don't want those labels, who don't want to be out there marching and on the front line. That's okay. I definitely understand that. However, personally, I've made a personal choice to show up and participate and use my voice because the generation before us, they paved the way for us. So I think it's my personal responsibility to make the pathway a little smoother for the next generation that's coming. And I'm so happy with the work that I'm doing with the City of Atlanta, being on the Citizen Review Board, being the first trans person to be appointed on that oversight board, which is very important for our voices to be heard. Hopefully I won't be the last trans person, but I want to be that example to let them know that, you know, we're all human beings, you know, don't judge us and we won't judge you. And I'm happy to be in a position to advise our mayor and the former mayor on policies that affect our community. And I'm thankful that she's really serious about the work that she's given us to do, because we're able to make sure that any kind of contracts that are coming out of the city, going to businesses and organizations, that the gender identity language is included specifically so that we're protected, so there's no misunderstanding. And another thing that I felt that was very important during those conversations with our mayor is that there were no repercussions. Previously, we did a lot of training for a lot of the shelters on how to treat us, how to be respectful, you know, and then the next executive director comes in and just flips the game, you know, and then you have to start over again. However, on the policy level, we discussed with the mayor, and she's making changes to the contracts to make sure there are some repercussions for these agencies that are receiving funding from the city. If you're discriminated against us, and there's a track record, and we can prove that you're discriminated against us continuously, then that affects your funding. And then when you go in somebody's wallet, then they start to reconsider and start to think, which is what happened when the NCAA, all the hoopla about the restrooms, and they're pulling out. I think more organizations and more agencies should do that. So I'm really, really happy about the work that we're doing on the policy level to make sure that even when this administration is gone, the next administration, there will be guidelines and regulations for the next administration. So we don't have to continue to have this conversation about treating trans people, gender non-conforming, non-binary people with dignity and respect.
Tracy, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's important, to make those changes. And I just wanted to end with Emily Kate sharing that, we should all consider including public statements on culture equity and non-discrimination, and she shared hers, and you can also look on Arts Build's website, we have one as well. So I just want to ask if there are any last questions before we wrap things up with Tracy. I don't see any other questions. This has been a great conversation. And Tracy, we have loved having you, and thank you for sharing about your personal story, about your advocacy, and how we can work to better our community by, being thoughtful and considerate about trans and non-identifying folks. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you guys next month.
Yes, Miriam, I just want to say one last little thing. Always remember, human rights are trans rights are human rights. Show up and participate for equity. Follow the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated, and Black trans lives matter also.
Thank you. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful day. Stay well and safe.
Bye.